council action on the ARA, the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act funds that will be coming into the Community Development Department. This addendum basically details the positions that will be retained in other city departments as a result of this money.
It says that there's a general fund impact approximately $500,000 for fringe benefit costs relating to the 18 positions, Bureau of Street Services, and that you're going to report did not identify the general fund impact for filling 2 positions in the Bureau of Contract Administration. The CAO will provide this information in committee, and we are in committee looking for that information. Do you have that information?
Yes, I did.
Very well.
Anime U10 from the CAO. There's no general fund impact with regards, or general fund contribution with regards to the CONAD positions. But in terms of the Bureau of Street Services position, there is a general fund contribution of about approximately $500,000. Those covers the fringe benefit, which is the pension and the health.
Where's that coming from?
That would be a general fund contribution.
Okay, well, the general fund is $530 million in the whole. So where are we going to get that 500,000
well, we'll try
out of the? Well, no, I don't want to try to. We're either going to identify it or we're not. Try to with a $530 million deficit doesn't work. So if we don't have it identified, we're going to have a problem. The city attorney's office is being cut $18 million. We're at $530 million deficit, and we're going to try to doesn't work. We're either going to find it or we're going to continue this matter. So if you don't have the answer, we're going to continue this matter because $500,000 is a lot of money, and we don't have it in the fund. Do you have a response to that, sir?
No, I don't.
Okay, then I suggest we continue this matter instead of killing the matter. That's your option. We can continue it so you can find the money, or we can deny it and you don't get it, whatever you prefer. Ms. Gibbs?
I think it would be helpful for CED or the CAO to explain why this item is on the council agenda for tomorrow. The concern that we have is the fact that this is economic stimulus money. Given the fact that this item was previously considered by council, in fact, my understanding was that they had already approved the recommendations contained in this report. The difficulty was that CDD apparently had transmitted this report after council had considered the matter. Therefore, the recommendations contained in the report were not formally adopted. So my understanding also is that the council had in fact already approved submitting this application as contained in the CDD report to the federal government.
Where's the $500,000 out of general fund?
Well, my understanding also is Councilman Parks, who is a member of the ad hoc committee, was aware of the fact that there is going to have to be a $500,000 contribution to pay for the indirect costs for these positions.
And my question is, where's that coming from?
Well,
we all can understand there's a need for it, but where's it coming from?
I think that the council had taken that into consideration, given the greater benefit that would be provided to the city by virtue of these 18 positions being restored. These positions were going to be deleted. Obviously, that meant that these individuals were going to have to be laid off. So this is a job creation program.
No, I don't dispute that. My question simply is, where's the $500,000 coming from? That's my only question. I don't have any problem with anything else. But it states here that the CDD report did not identify the general fund impact for filling 2 positions in the Bureau of Contract Administration. The CEO will provide this information committee, and that there's a general fund obligation of $500, which, as you know, we're more than that in deficit right now. So that's my question and concern. I can't say yes when we can't identify the funds. Mr. Parks hopefully will be here. Maybe he can answer that question. But in good conscience, I can't say we're going to find it when I know we are many more millions in the wrong direction.
Council member, well, the best that we could actually do is really work with the Bureau of Street Services and identify salary savings throughout the fiscal year of 09-10.
That doesn't work. That doesn't work. No, we don't want to try. We need to identify it. We've been at EERC since 8 o'clock this morning, took a break for council, went back because we got a huge gap. And the huge gap is creating huge problems. Now, Mr. Parks is just arriving. Maybe he can shed some light on this matter. Other than that, I don't want to, maybe we can. Mr. Parks, we're on number one, and on number one, there's a $500,000 fringe benefit cost. And the question is, where's the money coming from? No one seems to know. It's a general fund obligation for this particular item. And if you know where it's at, since you're the Chair of Budget and Finance, but if not, I don't see how we can approve this.
Let's see. These are for the fringe benefits.
500,000 for fringe benefits related to 18 positions, and the CDD did not identify the general fund impact,
I believe these are all block grant monies.
except for the 500,000.
The,
It says it's coming from general fund, and you know, as I know, where general fund
this
is.
is the cap rate. 15, we have, this is the cap rate, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and the thing is, we get that from the block grant. We charge the block grant for the salary and the cap rate,
Not for this purpose, sir.
not for this one?
No.
Not for this one. It only covers the direct salary. We did point out that it is a general fund contribution if we restore those 18 positions. The
And that's
500,000 will be a general fund contribution.
That's 500,000 out of the general fund, and that's what I'm trying to determine where it's coming from.
Well, the only place it could come from is a reserve fund. I mean, there's no other money. But I thought when we dealt with this in, what's the name of the committee, the
Ad hoc.
ad
Ad
hoc
hoc.
something or other, that there was $2 million, and it came out to like 133,000 per district, and that would have covered the entire amount. I didn't know that we were talking about another 500 for.
No, it's 1.2 million to cover the direct salaries for the 18
That's right.
position, which is 133,000 for each council district. The rest of the balance for the 2 million would be expenses. So, but there would still be a general fund contribution of $500,000 for the related costs.
That's where I'm confused. When we talked about it, they gave us the impression that the 133 per district covered the entire impact. It was
Well,
1 point something for personnel, which I think our assumption was part of that 1 point something for personnel included the cap rate and the salaries.
No,
I don't recall the 500.
Okay.
Why don't we
Well, the problem that I have, it states, the CAO has indicated that since fringe benefits are not provided by the grant, the general fund will provide approximately 500,000 for this purpose. And that's the question. If we don't have that 500,000 identified, then how do we approve this matter? Our number one, Mr. Cardenas, is now joining us. And if we don't have the 500,000, I don't know how we burden the general fund with money that's not there for this particular program.
Was the game plan for it to come out of the reserve fund, or was there any money in the UB or anything that we could address this?
There was really no plan in terms of addressing it. What we were going to try to see is that if we could generate some salary savings to pretty much cover the related costs.
Are we
But it was
within this department?
within this department. We were going to try it or within, some other way of, again, it was very specific that it was going to be a general fund contribution.
But how do we do that?
But I think what the issue is, this is the only sidewalk money.
Yes,
for the
it
whole
is.
year.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
The
That's
whole
correct.
program has been deleted, both the general fund portion of it as well as the regular CDBG funding. So as part of providing some sort of sidewalk repair for the city, it was pretty much agreed that to provide the 2 million.
Somebody here from street services?
Go on forward then. The question's real clear. Where are we going to find the 500,000 out of the general fund?
And with the cuts in your budget, is there an ability to absorb?
Good afternoon, Ron Olive, Bureau of Street Services. The salary savings are going to be kind of tough for us. Next year's budget, basically all of our vacancies have been swept. So we have a 0% vacancy rate at this point.
So where are you going to find the $500,000 for this particular expenditure? If you don't have it, you don't have it. You can't make it up.
Council members, as far as I'm at a loss. I don't know what to tell you. We have not identified that either.
Your vacancies were cut, then you had the 3 or 5% salary saving, and then have you gone through the 10%?
Well, we basically,
Responsibility?
out of between the shared responsibility and all the program cuts, we lost approximately 260 positions, probably 50-50 between the salary, or excuse me, the shared sacrifice and the regular program cuts. All the vacancies left about 95 filled positions, and we're working with the CEO on a number of strategies to try to bring some of those back between, especially the transportation ARA dollars. We have a lot of projects that have been awarded, and we are working with CEO again, like I say, to bring some of those positions back.
How many positions are in this grant? How many positions?
18.
80. So if
18
we
in
didn't
this.
have this, if we don't have this $2 million, those 18 people get laid off.
Well, as I said, we've identified well over the 95 position cuts through another branch of the ARA funding, through the transportation dollars. And I think we have, maybe the CEO wants to chime in on this, but I think we have a conceptual agreement that's going to bring back a lot more than those 95 positions.
What I thought when we talked about in this committee was that this was allowing us to retain these 18 bodies, otherwise they would be on the cut list.
That's right. Otherwise, we would have to find other programs to support them. Yes.
And so I think during the discussion that the $2 million was basically a windfall for us because we didn't expect it, that we would save 18 jobs, and with that 18 jobs, we'd get a small amount of sidewalks done that we could not budget for.
Yes.
Now, the thing I missed was the 500,000. I didn't realize at the time we were going through all this that there was a general fund impact. But that's what I recall in the discussion.
And as you say, we welcome the funding and the work.
Well, I don't have any.
The 18 positions, but the 500,000 is a question for.
I don't have any problem with the purpose of this particular grant, but it states out of the 2 million, 1.2 million is going to fund the direct salaries of the 18 positions. The remaining 800,000 will fund construction expense, overtime, and hiring hall salaries. The CAO indicated the fringe benefits are not provided, and we need somehow, before you leave here, to come up with $500,000, or it doesn't work. So, how do we find that $500,000? Or do we not restore 18 positions, but restore fewer positions, if that can be done, and then use whatever we need for the 500,000 gap? If that's permitted, or if it's not permitted, I don't know.
What did the 18 people do if they didn't have this grant? Are they off the payroll, or are they assigned to something else?
We'll have to, again, come back to this committee and council and see if we can't get resolution authorities assigned for different projects on the transportation element of the ARA program.
You know,
Again,
it also,
we have received over $50 million in that program in stimulus dollars.
it also says hiring hall salaries. So hiring hall salaries would not be city employees.
That's correct.
They'd be hired at a hiring hall. So if we're talking 18 positions, according to this, they're not all city employees.
The 18 positions, if we can fill them all for the entire year, that's, they can do this work. We won't need the hiring hall supplement. If we can't fill them for whatever reason through attrition or hiring delays, we'll have to supplement them with hiring hall personnel.
Well,
Because there's a timeline to get the work done, right?
Mr. Cardenas has a question, Ms. Parks.
What's the timeline for us to prove that we are accepting this grant and that we are notifying the grantor that we're in compliance?
Maybe I can defer that to CDD if I can. I believe
Okay.
they're the
Okay.
folks
now I
administering
have
the grant.
I have another question. On the hiring hall workers, is there another supplemental amount of money that we would have to identify where to get it from?
No, again, if we weren't able to fill these positions, it would come out of that same pot of money, that same $2 million.
Okay. Now, one of my questions was, what's the timeline for us to let the grantor to know that we are in compliance and we're telling them exactly how we're going to spend this money?
Well, the application has already been submitted to HUD. We should be notified, by the 5th of July as to the award. And then after that, we'll have 20 days. If they reject our application, we have 20 days in which to make changes. If we need to make changes for other reasons, we can continue to do that through the term of the grant.
Now, why do you say other reasons?
Well, because when we put this together, we had to get a number of projects that met eligibility, national objective, and those criteria. So, and understanding that we had a very short timeline. HUD's understanding that we have a very short timeline. They allow us to, if things need to be changed or swapped out because of something becomes problematic, then we can do that through the period of the grant. Now, we still have the same deadlines on the expenditure of all funds during this period of time, but we do have the opportunity to change particular projects or expenditures out.
Okay. Is this grant dependent on or requiring us to have in-house personnel do the work versus going to the hiring hall to hire the workers?
No, it basically looks to maximize the number of jobs.
Okay.
So it would
So-
not, that we're not limited to only city employees.
So we have a, so this is really a policy decision when it comes to, of course, we want to apply this grant and utilize it rather than pass it up
That's correct.
and render services to the community of Los Angeles, our constituents, by fixing their streets.
Correct.
With this grant money.
Correct.
So now we have to decide if we're going to figure out a way in which we can reduce the number of people who are going to be let go that do this kind of work, who are current city employees, or get the work done and still let them go, but still get the work done.
That's
Without
correct.
having to incur, the latter is without having to incur or figure out where we're going to find an additional $500,000 over and above the grant amount.
That's correct.
If I may, Councilman, there's only 3, possibly 4 of these classifications that are available to be hired through the hiring hall. The cement finisher worker, maintenance construction helper, and possibly the carpenter. The others may not be
Can you
available. through the hiring
delineate
hall.
what the other positions are?
The other positions that we would be required to be city personnel, we have listed here 2 street services supervisor 2s, 2 equipment operators, 2 heavy-duty truck operators, and looking down, the other folks are 1 light equipment operator, 1 truck operator, 1 tree surgeon supervisor 1 tree surgeon, 1 tree surgeon assistant. So that's
So
the-
there are no, we don't have the ability to hire those people? Is that because of our MOUs with those categories of workers, with those unions, or?
Traditionally, they have not been available through the hiring hall that we've worked through. It's really labor and some of the skilled crafts that we've been able to get, not the drivers, not the supervisors, equipment operators, whatever, not the skilled, the very high skilled and supervisory folks.
So the pool of workers, all told, here in Los Angeles, there are no hiring halls that we're aware of that provide those kinds of workers, or this department has not been utilizing other hiring halls?
The latter, sir. That there may be that we have not been utilizing.
Because those sound like the kind of workers that have representation, union representation in hiring halls all across this city, in this region. Heavy equipment operators, tree trimmers, truck operators, supervisors on construction sites. I would imagine that we could get them, those kinds of individuals through some hiring halls throughout Los Angeles.
I agree. I agree. We'd have to do some outreach and some research, but I'm sure you're correct.
Thank you.
How many positions could be fully funded, including benefits, with this grant? Maybe that's another way of looking at this. Instead of the 18, how many could we do and include that $500,000? Or does that have to come out of special general fund?
I'd have to defer to CAO's office on the actual calculation of those salaries.
Because the question is, if we reduce the 18 to a lower number, can we then use the remaining dollars to cover this $500,000?
The problem with doing that, sir, is that if you reduce the number of 18 positions, you pretty much hamper the ability of the Bureau to provide the services that they were going to provide to you. As far as my understanding is, the 18 positions are necessary to provide the menu of services for this program.
Okay, so then the question remains, which was the initial question, which we're still pondering, is where do we find the $500,000? Out of a general fund that's $530 million in deficit.
Yes, and we would also like to remind you, and CDD could attest to this, is that if we do decide to take out that $2 million appropriation, proposed appropriation to the sidewalk construction program, you have to pick another project to replace it.
I'm sure there's a number of projects we could replace it with. 1.2 million is going to fund the direct salaries, and then the 800,000 is for the other expenses.
Yes, it would.
But I can't see saying yes to something when you don't have the money identified. And to say possible, but it looks like they've done salary savings to the point, I mean, there's only so much meat on the bone, and there's not much left, if any. Mr. Chairman of Budget and Finance.
You know what, I think on this issue, this issue came before council and was approved, but there were some concerns about whether all of the projects were eligible. And also there was some issue about whether the second list of projects would replace those that were on the primary list if something fell off.
That's correct, yes.
And so, in effect, if I remember correctly, the only thing that wasn't before council was the letter from CDD to explain the clarity as to whether the projects were all eligible.
Well, the projects that we reviewed that were on the list, all of them met the national objective and were eligible. All right, we did that review. Now, going, pushing that further to ensure that those projects were also timely and, shovel-ready, so to speak, that was one of the things that was still, up in the air. But
I think also that this came twice, because the first time there was a dispute as to what items, I think Ms. Hahn had an issue about Lancet.
that's correct, yes.
Okay, and that came back, and it was moved. But I think one of the major discussions was that we were still moving with this report to have 25% human services.
Yes,
And we hadn't gotten any understanding whether that 25% was gonna be changed.
that's correct.
Now-
And we still haven't
I
gotten
think
notification.
that was the crux of the discussion, is whether the 25%, should we move something forward with 25% of human services without that agreement that we're gonna meet it, or should we reduce it to 15% and use the money for available projects? It was on page 2, or whatever, the second page.
That, you're correct, yes.
So I remembered that.
Yes,
correctly.
no.
June, I told you I remembered that.
You're never wrong, sir.
Thank you.
No, it's remembering it's tough these days.
But the thing is that, so we still haven't resolved the 25 versus 15%.
That's correct.
So I think that was what the whole tension was in council, that we were sending something forward to spend money on items that may not have been approved, and it could have solved other problems, because that 25 versus 15% was how much money? Was it,
Was about $2.3 million.
so that was the crux of why it came back.
Yeah.
And if we've not resolved it, because I don't think we can use this block grant money for the $500,000 cap.
Yes, you can.
Can
Yeah,
you?
yes, we could,
Okay, so that was the whole issue, is whether the 2-point-something million was being used appropriately, or should we have gone back to 15% and reassess that remaining 2 million? And without that, I think we're right back to sitting at the council with the same questions they would have a couple of weeks ago.
yes.
So why don't we hold it here until they find the answer?
So when do we think, because it was several meetings that were gonna go on with the secretary.
Yes, there was a number of meetings and phone calls from the mayor to the Secretary of HUD on this, giving us a waiver of the 15% up to 25% on the public services cap.
Okay, did we put a deadline of when those discussions were gonna?
Well, we're supposed to have, be notified, by July 5th, as to the acceptance of our application. Now, if they reject our application, then they would reject it, indicating that, no, you did not, we're not giving you a waiver for 25% and have to draw it back to 15. Or they would, say that we've accepted your application, the 25% for public services is approved, and you can go forth.
So but HUD is, the issue is we've already submitted all the necessary applications.
Yes, we have.
It's a matter of whether we reshuffle these projects to meet that decision on July 5th.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
See, that's an issue I don't think we can make a decision today. Because this is the same product that came to us before, and it was the same questions as to whether you should basically approve $2-point-something million that you didn't know whether HUD was gonna approve them. And until that decision's made, then it's a matter of whether we reshuffle the deck and rearrange the money to cover the 500,000 or projects that were on the list that were not being considered before we move forward.
Yes.
You might as well just hold it.
All right, we're gonna hold this in committee. This will continue.
The only thing to keep in mind is that this item is in council tomorrow, so basically what you'll do is continue it in council as well.
Right, thank you. Okay, that matters.
July 5th is a
Oh,
real date?
wait, okay.
I'm sorry?
July 5th is a real date?
It's the target date that we've been given, so, no, it's not a drop-dead date that we've gotten, but all indicators that we've been told is that we should have an answer by July 5th.
So the thing is, if July 5th, they come back and they upped our human services to 25%, then our only issue then is finding out where we're gonna find the $500,000 for the city match.
That's correct.
If-
Or take this line item out of the plan and substitute it with another one.
Okay, so those are some options, but that would be done by HCED as opposed to this committee.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And then the other option is if they didn't approve, if they step with 15%, the whole project should go back to HCED to figure out how they're gonna
Reshuffle the,
shuffle the debt.
yes.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, what projects?
Okay, we have Teresa.
No, it would, she did correct me. It would actually then go back to the ad hoc committee.
Ad hoc committee on the ARA.
Yeah.
Okay, but now
Go
didn't
to
HCED actually put the project list together?
It was a group of staff from
Okay.
the council office, the mayor's office, and HCD, but it's not necessarily HCD committee who put.
Because we beat
the
up Herb on it, I remember that. He took
It
credit.
would have to go to the ad hoc committee.
Yeah.
The only thing to keep in mind is
Teresa
that
Sanchez, public comment?
if you have position authorities, then it might still come back here.
Okay,
So
Yeah,
keep
for
that
the
in mind.
positions.
If there are
Right.
position authorities.
Yeah, okay,
all right, Ms. Sanchez?
yeah.
Good afternoon,
Good afternoon.
Mr. Chairman and council members. My name is Teresa Sanchez, and I'm with SCIU Local 721. I was also in council this morning when there was discussion about the community service block grant funds and how they may be used to be able to do what the original intent of the ARA funding was, the national intent, if you will, and that is to preserve jobs and create jobs, and also keep local government providing service to the public in these really difficult economic times. And I just wanted to say one thing conceptually that I think is important for this committee in particular to understand, and that is you've got two different discussions going on in the city about the use of ARA funds. One, or not going on. One, you've got council, mayor, staff, and community development department, and other city departments and public works in particular, talking about how we're going to do these projects, right? And then there's another discussion going on about how we're going to lay off and furlough city employees. So I think it would be really strategic to bring these discussions together, to have one citywide discussion about how do we use the ARA funds strategically to be able to continue provide services to the public, to do these vital infrastructure projects, as well as how to preserve city jobs. On the sidewalk program in particular, I think my specific suggestion for finding the $500,000 would be to look with the city attorney's office about how much we paid out in trip and fall liability claims last year. I don't know the exact number, but I've heard that in years past it's been in upwards of $1 million. So if we don't have a sidewalk program at all, there are lost opportunity costs, and there are also potential liabilities at the other end if we're not out there repairing sidewalks citywide. So I would request to this committee to instruct staff to meet with us, meet with other folks in the city that are looking very deeply into the issue of the ARA funds and how they can and cannot be used to save local agency jobs. We're doing this all over the county, all over Southern California. Every jurisdiction is going through the same thing, trying to figure out how to maintain services with the use of the ARA dollars with the maximum benefit to the community.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question to the Ms. Sanchez. But everything you said is very consistent with 9/10 of the variables that we all want to try to address. But the one part that you didn't bring up in your presentation was using this example. How do we not even justify, how do we find the $500,000 in this example that would come from the general fund if we were to pass this as presented to this committee? How would we find the $500,000 when we have a $500 million budget hole? And if anybody wants to argue with that figure, we have hundreds of millions of dollars as a budget hole. And then we have a budget hole next year that seems to be on its way to exceeding or possibly doubling the budget hole of this fiscal year that we just budgeted. So that's the part that I would love to better understand how we're going to address that part. Do you have any suggestions on that?
Yeah, I do. I don't know exactly, I can't point to a specific line item in a grant, an RFP or anything like that, but I do think there are other RF funds available. There are other grants that may be used to supplement the $500,000. For example, the workforce investment dollars. Is there something we could do, because we can use that for incumbent workers? Maybe is there something we can do to enhance the service and legitimately use those funds? And that's just one example. There may be other pieces of HUD money or other CDBG money that could be used.
So your suggestion is actually the answer that, one of the answers that we're all looking for is, as long as we're not committing funds we don't have or we haven't identified, then we can go forward, save jobs, and or provide more services with in-house jobs or going to the hiring hall or what have you. But the bottom line is the missing component at this moment in time on this item is, where are we going to get that $500,000? I hope you're right in that by scrubbing down all of the sources and all the pots of money, we can find another pot other than the general fund where we identify the $500,000, and then as long as we insert that in the motion, then we've satisfied the problem on this item.
Right, and what I'm suggesting is we have lots and lots of city staff and union staff and other folks who are looking at different pieces of this. I don't think people are doing what you're suggesting, Mr. Cardenas, and that's looking at the whole picture and coming up with a comprehensive plan for how the city are going to use these funds. Because again, there may be projects in recreation and parks, there may be projects in sanitation that could be supplemented through either training dollars or some other funding that's available. We can combine funds. There's no reason under the law that I'm aware of that you can't combine funding on a project.
And the CAO and the CLA is responsible for those. This committee reviews the project when it's brought to us. They do the research, and I would suggest that they meet with you to find alternate means to find the money.
Right, and I would include CDD staff in that as well because they do a lot of this work.
Very well. Thank you.
Let me just comment. One of the things that's an added piece of the puzzle in Public Works Committee now is a proposal that hasn't come to the council for final approval, but to adopt as a sidewalk repair would adopt the whole issue of, what do we call it? Point of sale, and which would basically put us in the mode of moving sidewalks, repair, and liability to the property owner from the city. And so that has to be thrown into that equation, because what we expect is that the point of sale is where you would bring it to their attention at the time of the sale of the home, but there'd have to be an inspection program ongoing that would bring bad sidewalks to their attention and basically get the repair done privately. So as you talk about merging all of these issues, particularly in the city, and everybody's interested in saving jobs, but I think the issue is whether sidewalks may not be the most relevant one to be putting our arms around, because there's things going on that's looking to divest our responsibility in that area.
I thank you for that comment, Mr. Parks. I do think that I do feel confident that we will move forward with the point of sale, but I think that that's just one piece of the puzzle. And I also think that sidewalks may not be the #1 priority, but it is very important when you consider our ADA requirements, our Americans with Disability Act requirements. That's something that is additional liability to the city. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Sacramento case. That ended up impacting the city's transportation funds for a couple of decades. So it's something, again, I'd be more than happy to work with staff to come back to you with another report that would identify the $500,000, maybe give you a somewhat more robust picture of the sidewalk world, and talk about how we can maximize the use of the stimulus monies to accomplish all of these goals.
Okay, thank you. Number 2, please.
So for the record, before we move on, the item will be continued. In the meantime, CAO, CLA, CDD will get together with Local 721 and identify the $500,000.
Attempt to identify the 500,000.
Attempt to identify it.
Right.
But
Okay.
also, one of the lines, we have to wait, hopefully put a note that July 7th, some decision made on whether this should go back for reassessment or whether the human resource cap is in place or changed.
Okay.
Okay, number 2.
Okay, for item 2. What you have before you is the city administrative officer and the city attorney have submitted reports along, and this has to do with the grant award in the amount of $100,000 from the California Emergency Management Agency. This is for the city attorney's project Safe Neighborhoods Anti-Gang Initiative, and for the period October 1, 2008 through September 30th, 2009. On April the 20th of this year, the Public Safety Committee recommended approval of the recommendations contained in the CAO as amended in committee. Ad hoc Committee on Gang Violence has waived consideration of this matter.
Okay, on this matter, we have the same situation, except it's $77,242. And the city attorney is been cut $18 million. Are the funds available? Because it says a general fund subsidy of $77,242 is needed to provide this grant. So the question is, has that been identified, or are you still looking for that in the general fund?
Ida Rubio with the City Administrative Office. This grant is for the year 3, which is for fiscal year 0809. Yes, to answer your question, the general fund contribution has already been identified in the year-end FSR. The department did identify funds to cover their grant fund salary shortfall.
Okay. Peter?
I was just here for substantive questions about, we just have a prosecutor, as you all know, that's cross-designated, working over the U.S. Attorney's Office, dealing with gangs and guns.
How many do they have over there?
On this grant,
No, how many deputy city attorneys assigned to the U.S. Attorney's Office?
out of our unit, I think there are 4.
Okay. All right, so the money's been identified. This is a grant that was expired September 09?
That's correct.
Okay. Any questions, gentlemen? So we will concur with the recommendation of Public Safety Committee as amended.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 3, please.
On item 3, Personnel Department has submitted a report relative to the extension of a contract with H Remedy Business Solutions. This for 1 additional year to provide the city with alternative dispute resolution services in an amount not to exceed $355,000. This item will need to go to Budget and Finance.
335. You said
335. 335,000. Also, this item is also referred to Budget and Finance Committee.
Good afternoon, Dave Noltmeyer, Personnel Department, Workers' Compensation Division.
James
Before-
Lauderdale, Service Employees International Union, Local 721.
Before the committee today is a report related to the city's Alternative Dispute Resolution Program. The program was the result of the workers' comp legislation reform that happened back in 2004. The city actually implemented its ADR program July 1st of 2008, with all SEIU members participating in the program who would have a workers' comp injury after July 1st of 2008. The program basically provides 4 services to the injured employee. It provides ombudsman services, nurse advocate services, along with mediation and arbitration services. The goal of the program is ultimately to reduce cost of the claims, to reduce litigation, and basically give better overall satisfaction for the injured employee. We're happy to report that the program has been successful, and we're here today before the committee to recommend the continuation of the program for 1 additional year.
And that is to start when?
It would start July 1st, 2009.
And what was the fee this previous year?
I'm sorry, council member?
The fee the previous year?
$335,000 is the budget. There
Remains
is.
the same?
Yes,
So there's no increase in the cost?
correct.
Okay. Sir, anything from you?
No, we, as a party to the contract, on behalf of our members, we're here to join the department in urging that it be continued for an additional.
You're pleased with the program?
Absolutely.
Colleagues?
I have a question.
Mr. Cardenas?
I'm looking at my notes, and it talks about reducing indemnity claim costs,
Yes.
and all I see is percentages. What kind of dollar translation is that?
Councilmember, right now, we're looking at 9 months of data, roughly from about 400 claims, and the reduction is not substantial in the form of dollar savings. That's why we're requesting the continuation of the program to look at additional data to see if we'll see increased dollar savings.
So you want more time to figure out whether or not it works?
Correct. I mean, right now, the early indication is there are reduced costs on the claims. They're being short, the claims are shorter. We have no litigation in it. So we are receiving savings from that.
So there's 2 potential savings that we'd like to track, and that is the reduction of the loss of production,
Correct.
as in work days, things of that nature.
Correct.
And then on top of that, a reduction in the loss of dollars from litigation.
Correct.
Whether it's utilization of city attorney time when we win a case, and/or the loss of a case where we actually have to send a check because we had to compensate the person because we lost the case. So, how do you know whether or not another year is going to give you enough time to come back to us and tell us more tangibly what kind of dollars we can actually attribute to that? And I understand some of it will have to be extrapolations, because obviously if you don't have a case, if somebody chooses not to file a lawsuit against us, all we can do is just look at some honest extrapolations as to what kind of case it could have been if we would have lost it. You know, do we lose an average of 20,000, those kinds of cases, or is it the kind of case where we can lose 100,000, et cetera? But I understand that difficulty, but time-wise, what leads you to believe that another year is going to give you enough time to bring us back some semblance of that kind of picture?
Because a workers' comp claim has to mature, you know, we are looking at a very small number of claims right now where we have closure on them. That's why we're requesting the additional year. That out of the 1,200 claims that were in the first 9 months, we only had roughly about 400 of them closed, which were simple claims, et cetera. We'd like to look at the claims that are still open, which are, longer-term claims, to try to see if we're going to realize the savings that we think this program will come forward with.
When it comes to this program, are there other jurisdictions that have utilized this kind of effort and that had success?
Jim, go ahead.
Well, this was borrowed from the private sector. We were the first public sector applicant to attempt to do an ADR program. I think we were actually beaten into operation by the city of Long Beach by a couple of months because of our.
But they don't have anywhere near the number of claims.
They don't have anywhere near the number of claims, and I don't know that they have any more reliable information at this point in time. They've been in existence about the same period of time. So in terms of public sector statistics on this kind of stuff, there aren't any. This is a remarkably successful program in the private sector, from which we borrowed it and worked long and hard to be able to get the ability to have public sector carve-out. But there really isn't a mountain of information out there other than what we're generating as we go through it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Parks? All right, and we will then approve the Personnel Department's recommendation.
Thank you.
Number 4, please.
Item 4 is a fairly routine matter. This comes before you every quarter, and it's a Personnel Department report relative to consolidated reasonable accommodations for employees with permanent work restrictions as a result of industrial or non-industrial injuries or illnesses. And this particular report is for the third quarter of fiscal year 2008-2009.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Raylan Napper, Personnel Department, EEO section. Again, this report is from January to March of this year. And just to kind of walk you through the highlights, the Workers' Compensation Division provides the first part of the data for light duty hours worked, IOD saved, that's injury on duty money saved, which is the light duty hours times the employee's salary, and then IOD spent, which is the money spent for employees who cannot return to work. And if you'll turn to
Is that for all departments?
all departments, and attachment 1 has the breakdown by department as well as city totals. And you'll see first, second, and third quarter of this fiscal year. In the third quarter, light duty hours are up from this time last fiscal year by nearly 60%.
What do we attribute that to?
Just the emphasis the Workers' Compensation Division puts on return to work. Also, the third-party administrator, which handles the sworn claims, which is a huge number of claims, are also being more aggressive about return to work. And the correlation is the IOD save is up 67% from last fiscal year. And the same reason for that, of course. And then IOD spent is only up from last fiscal year, just under 15%. And part of that has to do with this fiscal year, the report reflects reconciled data, which meant when things were entered in payroll, they weren't tied to a claim number, a workers' compensation claim number, whereas last year, some of that data was not in there. But even though there's an increase from last fiscal year, there is a decrease from the prior quarter of this year. Slight, but some. Any questions on the workers' compensation?
Let me just ask one question. The one figure I don't understand, I understand the issue of return to work on the light duty hours increased, but the increased dollar allocation on IOD, how is that impacted by the return to work?
Again, IOD saved is hours times salary. And so that means we consider a savings because we are getting work out of those employees for their salary, whereas the IOD spent is they are off work. So even though it's not an exact same percentage, I would attribute that to the different salary of classes from last fiscal year.
Okay.
So.
Now, if I'm reading this properly, we have the 47,000 hours of more light duty, which is clear because we're getting more people back to work.
Right.
Then we go injured on duty, pay for salaries continued for injured employees who cannot work increased by 1.3. That's the figure I don't.
Oh, I'm sorry.
understand.
That, part of that would be, I believe, COLA increases. And then also, as I mentioned, we actually have more accurate data this fiscal year than last fiscal year. So you are seeing some more, everything is captured this fiscal year. Last fiscal year, some things were not captured in the report.
All right, so the issue is that will end up being our kind of a platform to gauge in the future?
Yes. Yes.
Because of the accuracy of the reporting? And then, but the two positives are the 47,000 hours increase, and then the final figure is the 1.7 million are the two positives.
Yes, and I would also say that the IOD spent, it is trending down this fiscal year, so that's a positive as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Carter? Okay, so this,
Let me ask one other thing, because this comes up periodically in our claims board, that there seems to be at times departments have their own rules and they go forward on this reasonable accommodation, and invariably, if they're not under the guidance of personnel department, the fee goes up in the sense of the lawsuit because we didn't go forward on this prescribed steps. And I forget what the term is that we use, that we have to.
The interactive process?
Interactive process. And we asked in the claims board how personnel department can become the focal point of guidance of departments, because they always seem to get just enough of these to mess them up. And whether personnel department, being the central point, can guide them through, because they missed the interactive, they do not make the accommodations, our lawsuits go up higher, and I just want to find out how personnel department might be playing that centralized role. I know we train them, but often that training dissipates over time.
Right. We train them. We try to remind them that we're there as a resource. We're also generally in touch with them on individual cases. Also, I believe you are aware that we were revising the citywide reasonable accommodation guidelines, and those are now out. They're far more comprehensive. They also pair the workers' compensation information and programs. So I think that has been a disconnect in the past as well between non-industrial and industrial reasonable accommodations. So hopefully that will help departments.
And how long have they been out?
They went out this month.
Okay.
anything else, Mr. Parks?
That should do it.
Okay. We will,
Not on file?
yes, note
Okay.
file. Note file number 4, thank you. Number
Okay.
5, we continued, so we're up to number 6.
Item 6, the city administrative officer has, in the Bureau of Street Lighting, has submitted reports relative to the proposed light emitting diode LED energy efficiency program and other related matters, which includes position authorities. In Energy and Environment Committee, the CAO came before the committee and amended their recommendations. My understanding is that the CAO is providing additional amendments today.
Go ahead, folks.
Good afternoon, council members. Janice Chang, Office of the CAO. That is correct. There is another amendment to the amendment that was presented in Energy and Environment Committee. But let me give you a briefing on the report that is before you. The Bureau of Street Lighting has presented a report regarding the replacement of 140,000 street lighting fixtures with energy efficient light emitting diodes, which is also known as LEDs. And energy savings from these LEDs is projected to be save at least 40% in energy costs over the years after repayment of a $40 million loan from the Department of Water and Power that is projected to go forward and fund this retrofit. The amendment that was presented in Energy and Environment Committee requested that the funding for this project and 11 positions that were attached to it that were approved in the 2009-10 budget. Those were all placed in the unappropriated balance to be reviewed by council at mid-year, and what we had requested was that the funding and the positions be moved back to the department so they could begin this program right away as soon as the fiscal year begins.
And where's the money coming from?
There is a $40 million loan from the Department of Water and Power that is being finalized between the department and the Bureau of Street Lighting currently.
A $40 million loan from Water and Power?
Yes, and there will also be energy savings and energy rebates that will help fund this program.
And this program is going to cost, for the 11 positions?
The entire program, the 5-year program, is projected to be costing $57 million. In 2009-10, the cost to the Bureau of Street Lighting would be $1.2 million.
So what's the rate on that loan?
Mr. Chair, Eddie Brahimian, Director of Bureau of Street Lighting. Good afternoon, and thank you for having us here today. The entire program is $57 million. It's going to be paid from the $40 million loan from the Department of Water and Power, about $16.4 million rebate money from Department of Water and Power, and about $3.5 million of streetlight maintenance assessment funds. The rate,
the interest rate back to Water and Power?
5.25%.
5.25?
Yes.
That's a high rate.
Well, that's the lowest that DWP was able to provide to us, and our analysis and our report was based on 5.25% also. Now, the payback is completely from the savings that it's going to be generated from the energy efficiency savings and the electricity bill that we pay to DWP. So there is no general fund component to this program. All of it is going to be paid through the Streetlight Maintenance Assessment Fund and from the loan.
But the positions, the 11 positions, were in the unappropriated balance. Now, who's going to pay for those now?
The Streetlight Maintenance Assessment Fund. Well, as part of the budget, we introduced this Revenue Generating Energy Efficiency Program, the LED, and it was approved as part of the budget. But unfortunately, all the positions that were approved as part of next year's budget were moved to the UB. Well, these positions are going to be able to, is going to help us to implement the program. Without the positions, there's no way I can start the program. And all the positions will be paid for from Streetlight Maintenance Assessment Fund, which is special fund, our own fund. And the DWP money will basically supplement our entire program.
So you're looking at hiring 11 people?
Yes, to be able to do this program.
How many people are you laying off?
We're not laying off anybody. We're all special funded. Bureau of Street Lighting doesn't have any general fund component to our operation.
None whatsoever?
Not whatsoever.
What about your salary?
That's part of Streetlight Maintenance Assessment Fund also.
So no general fund goes into your department?
No, we don't have any general fund.
What happens when we turn off the lights?
I'm sorry?
I was just kidding.
We also, Councilman, we also pay the related cost to general fund, about $7 million from the special fund. So there is no burden on general fund as a result of our operation.
Mr. Cardenas.
When you say no burden on the general fund, so the department is responsible also for the benefits of their employees as well?
Yes,
okay.
Everything.
So you pay holistically. If you have an employee and they're paid $50,000 and the benefits for them is attributable to an additional $25,000, that comes out of your department?
If I'm not mistaken, the related cost that we pay on annual basis to general fund covers all those benefits and all the related costs, overhead benefits and everything.
So that's communicated every year, and then you come up with
right
the budget for that.
Mm-hmm.
The 5.25% with Department of Water and Power, is that something that they explain to you that it has to be of that rate because of state and or federal regulations that don't allow them to gift the money to your department or to give it to you at 0%, or
Lower
They
rate.
didn't get a federal bailout loan to pass on to you, or what?
I think I know the answer to it, but I think there are representatives from.
Is there
the
anybody
Department
who
of
can-
Water and Power
sure.
here, so, no?
I don't discriminate on who can give me the answer, just as long as you don't wing it and you give me an honest answer, that's all.
And my question on the rate was not the fact that they were actually looking for a gift, but it seemed that 5.25 is extremely high in this economic market.
The Tom Gaxter with Department of Water and Power. The 5.25% is based upon DWP's cost of funds at our most recent fundraising bond sale. That was 5.11% as of March 31st, and so the difference is what it costs to recoup the administrative costs associated with this loan by DWP.
What was the lowest bond you guys sold in the last 5 years?
That I don't know.
Well, why don't we go with that figure?
This is reflective of what money costs us today.
So could we add a clause in there if it dips down that the department can go ahead and call in that new rate and then get that rate?
I'd be happy to take that back to the CFO and ask.
I'm half joking, but I'm serious. Because that's what but see, that's what the real world does, especially on $40 million loans. They get creative and it's a negotiation. And one party says, I can live with that. And the other party says, okay, well, let's put it in the contract. So as long as we're not violating any laws or anything like that, I would like to reserve the right for the department to get the best rate possible.
Understood. I'll take that back.
Okay, so if we approve this, then those details of that agreement on that loan are done subsequent to this?
They're separate. Really, they're completely separate because these positions will be funded from Streetlight Maintenance Assessment Fund, where we do have the money. Again, DWP MOU is in the process of final stages right now. We have gone through the city attorneys. We have gone with DWP back and forth. So we have to look at to see if we can add another line item, as you just mentioned, to the MOU, basically.
So basically what I'm asking for, simply put, is just an option for a lock-in clause. Obviously, the rate given at inception would be the 5.25%, because that's what you're going on. But if we have, what's the period in which we think we're going to pay this back?
Oh, this is a 5-year plan itself, but we think we're going to pay it back in 7 years.
Okay. So if the payback is over a 7-year period, maybe you could take a certain portion of the first 2 years or what have you and say it either stays that way, but if you call it in by communicating back and forth if they've got a better bond rate, then maybe that's an option you could put in the contract.
Yeah, this loan is actually being made in 5 installments, and we fixed the rate at 5.25 across the 5-year period in which these loans will be issued. So there's certainly be an opportunity to take a look at that amount at each installment.
Obviously, will be on the remainder of the payments, not on the. Right. Like if they exercise their option a year in and they've made 4 payments, if it's quarterly or what have you, then what happens is then that is what it is. They paid 5.25, but on going forward, if it was adjusted, then you just calculate it out from there.
And Councilman, one thing, one more item that I want to share with you. On annual basis, we would like to bring a report back to the full council about the whole program, what we're doing, how much we're saving, how the progress is going. Maybe we need more money, maybe we should accelerate, maybe we should slow down. So on annual basis, we will come back to you and the full council to give you a complete report of where we are.
Do you actually care to hear our opinion once we approve it the first time?
Yes, definitely.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Definitely. We are going to make a major change in the communities by changing the color of the street lights throughout the city. The orangish yellow is going to be changed to a white color with the LED, which is much better. Police department loves this color, by the way, and throughout the country, the white color is been known for better color rendering and also higher visibility. So there's going to be an impact throughout the city with this program as far as visible impact, where the color of the lamp is concerned. So you will be hearing about this program, I think, throughout this program.
And then what about your MICLA funding? What's the rate on that?
No, we changed that. There is no MICLA funding. All of the money is going to come from Department of Water and Power.
That was if they only gave you a $20 million loan.
Yes.
If DWP gave you a $20 million, then you would have to go to MICLA for the difference.
Well, DWP agreed to give us the entire $40 million. And again, without involvement of DWP in this program I don't think was going to be possible. So I want to thank DWP for participating, partnering with us to make this happen.
You
This is
didn't-
a win-win program for everyone.
You didn't have to threaten to sue them, did you?
No.
To go to the 40 million?
No, we have excellent relationship with Department of
And
Water.
you really didn't have the option to say you're going to go to a neighboring provider for power because we're locked in. So, well, thank you for accepting that that negotiation, that 40 million.
It's our pleasure.
And you're gonna do the installation on Mondays and Thursdays between 9 and 4?
Why is that, Councilman?
You don't know? You're not supposed to water except those. Okay, so can we have the report correctly? Because what I show here is MICLA funding.
No, that was their original request.
Oh, so that's been removed?
Yes.
Okay, I wanted to make sure we were accurate on it.
But
So
what,
these,
what we're asking from you is to put this on the council agenda so the positions are available for us to fill right away so we start implementing this program. Because as we install fixtures, we are realizing the savings.
see, what I'm thinking is that there will be some departments, because of the budget, that may be losing personnel. Would first priority go to current city employees for the streetlight engineer and the other electrical craft helper? I mean, before we go out and hire from the general public,
Yes.
we should make a condition that any positions would first go to city employees who are being displaced from their current positions.
Well, there was a policy letter from the mayor regarding any new positions that we are going to fill, and the process is that we will advertise it. And some of them are very specialized positions. We will advertise it for the entire city, and then if we can't get anyone from the city, then we'll go through the hiring from outside.
Because you got Department of Transportation, which they have engineers.
Right.
You got Water and Power, they have engineers. They may want to jump over and.
No question. That's the policy we are following today.
Wait a minute, you said Department of Water and Power has engineers, but they'd be silly to come back. They'd take like a 30-40% pay cut.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot about that.
Nobody comes back from department. I was actually apprised of a meeting, and I'm saying it on the record on purpose because I have it on good authority. There was sometime in '08, there was an initial meeting with new hires from city departments, and then some technical people were in the room, and as they were done with their presentation to the new hires, the new happy-to-be city employees, they said, do you have any questions? And this is not a joke. One of the city employees raised their hand, the new city employee, first day on the job, says, how soon can I apply for a transfer to DWP?
Interesting.
I got to tell Greg Smith that. I haven't gotten around to telling him.
Mr. Parks?
One thing, and we've went through this in depth in the Budget Committee.
Yes.
But I was just wondering, what is it, the 1913 assessment process? Have we made any headway on that, or what is it, 1915 or whatever it is?
Right. Well, this program is not going to
I know
impact
it's
the
not connected.
assessment program.
And before the city attorney tells me I'm off the subject, is there any way you can intertwine it in your answer about this item? I just want to know, did we make any progress, that's all?
Well, not really, nothing to report at this point.
Well, next meeting, maybe you'll have the information.
Yes, sir.
All right, so we have recommendation for approval. Thank you.
Thank you.
So just for clarification, what you will see before you in council will be two separate reports, one from energy and one from personnel.
Right.
The one that I'm assuming council will be adopting will be the one from today.
Right.
Personnel report.
The new.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.